Yeah, just welcoming everybody here to meet Bobby here in person. So Bobby, as a membership owner and potential course creator, I got your legal templates a couple years ago, and they helped save me thousands in legal fees for one. From drawing up contracts with clients to protecting my new online business that I didn't really know how to run or what to do with. I remember the terms and conditions and the privacy policy, which are incredibly important, is just a basic. And even had colleagues who were kind of saying, "Oh, where'd you get that done?" And those were all very comprehensive and easy. So now you've taken the next step with Plainly Legal, and it's going far beyond that to protect particularly new and newbie online business owners like myself. So can you tell us what we have to look forward to with Plainly Legal?
Yeah, so Plainly Legal was born as an idea in January of this year, and it's an interesting thing. As a lawyer, I've been a lawyer since 2002. I've been practicing. I practiced in a lot of contexts, but I represented big, huge companies from the AT&Ts and Morgan Stanleys of the world. I was a U.S. attorney or an assistant U.S. attorney, so I got to stand up for 3 years and say I'm here on behalf of the United States of America. So I've kind of seen a lot of how the legal stuff works and how it impacts businesses. But the problem is that oftentimes in this online space, we lawyers have not served people well. We've like acted like legal stuff is these one-off solutions that you need, but that's not really what people need. I know as a lawyer, you need legal templates to get your agreements in place, but a lot of stuff is more just you need guidance to understand what are the legal issues you face, because I used to say for a long time, you're not going to be able to have me standing over your shoulder when you're making legal decisions. And every time you're doing something, whether it's posting on social, creating new content, creating a new membership, there are legal implications. And so we wanted to create a solution that could kind of be like having me standing over your shoulder. Now, it won't literally be standing over your shoulder, but essentially create something that works very much like a virtual in-house legal team for small businesses. Kind of how when I worked with these big companies, they would have in-house lawyers who managed me as an outside lawyer helping with more complex things, but their in-house lawyers dealt with all their contracts, dealt with basic intellectual property issues and advising, and helped them kind of navigate things. And so that was the vision for Plainly Legal. And it started in January, partly because the AI revolution of Chat GPT and all those things is what first inspired me to believe I might be able to do something like this, because I've known for a long time that we needed more than templates. And so I started investigating in January. Now, we don't use Chat GPT or those kind of AI systems in the traditional sense, because that stuff's not ready to write legal language for you, to give you legal guidance, et cetera, because it will do what's called hallucinating. It'll just make stuff up. Not good with legal stuff. It's okay with marketing if it, comes up with some stuff, but for legal stuff, accuracy matters. But we are able to use it in ways to really kind of help us make it possible for me to be provide a one-to-many solution that is much more like having a lawyer on staff and less like just having to go search the Googles when you need a solution or an answer to a legal question.
And so in a minute, I'll ask about the three features of it. But
Yep.
the big question that's pulling at my heart right now is, okay, can you educate me in the people in my field? I've got a lot of mental health consultants, coaches of all kinds, mindset coaches, as well as sport coaches, people who are kind of putting some products out there. What are the legal issues that are really important for us that we may not be aware of?
Well, and I'm going to give you an answer that people don't like. And this is what made it so hard, because the answer is it depends. Like there's not, people always ask me, what are the three biggest mistakes that business owners make? I'm like, it really depends. I mean, or what are the three most important things for people to do? And part of the problem is that legal stuff can be complicated, but it's not complicated in the sense of each individual decision is complicated. It's just kind of like, it's a lot of different things that have to be done and a lot of different factors that go into it. So that's part of why we kind of thought this through and said, how can we do that? And instead of providing, hey, here are the three things that everybody needs to do, and we'll get to this in a second, I think when you talk about the features, we were going to say, hey, we need something that's going to look specifically at your business and specifically based upon what you're doing as a business owner to figure out what are the issues that you need to be dealing with, because it's going to differ. Quite honestly, you mentioned coaches. Well, a coach is going to have different concerns than someone who's just a course creator and not a coach, right? And coaches oftentimes will have courses, et cetera, but there's different implications. But similarly, like If people are service providers, and I don't know if you serve those people, but if they're doing direct client work, that's a different set of issues. And so all of these things are kind of different, and you need to be thinking about it. And the big problem we've had, or one of the big problems I think that this market has had, is that we lawyers have been using the superlative statement standard, which is in marketing, to say that, whatever solution I have is the best, the quickest, the fastest, whatever. I mean, so those kind of things. And we've all said that whatever we help you with is the most important thing, right? So for a long time, I was guilty of saying getting it in writing, getting your agreements in writing is the most important thing you should do from a legal perspective. That's true for a lot of people. For other people, it actually might be that other things are the most important. And I was doing that just like everybody else. I mean, trademark and copyright lawyers would say that dealing with your intellectual property is the most important thing you need to do. And so I wanted to get out of that. I wanted to stop doing that. And that's part of what we're doing with Plainly. Is there's not one most important thing. It depends. We're going to help you figure out what matters for you.
So you've been seeing me smile this whole time because I'm going to geek out now on you with psychology here for a minute, but that is something that I learned in graduate school early on, and where I'm seeing the field of, I hope, mental health and other things adopting too, is that let's move away from these protocols to treat depression, this or that, and start to recognize the individual. So in my work, this huge part of what I do, and in the membership as well, I kind of say like, hey, can I see the individual in front of me, and what are the thoughts, feelings, or actions that are hurting your performance, and how do we deal with that? Pulling from science, pulling from the aspect, but there is no one way to address all of these. And now you're doing it legally. You're not just saying it, but you're rather looking at each of us as individual clients, and you've got this amazing system that now can tailor it to our needs. So we get what we need in our way, in our timing. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so what's funny is, like, I have been on the search for a solution for this. Like, I was looking for an off the shelf solution for some of these things for a long time. And so as an example, my team hates that I love the idea of a quiz. I love the idea of a quiz as a marketing thing. But the problem is, like, I would always try to find, well, could I find a way, an off the shelf solution where I could give you a personal recommendation, guidance on what you needed to do. But the problem is, if you think about it, I don't know how much your audience has looked into quiz software. Well, quiz software is meant to put people into maybe 5, 6 buckets. That doesn't work for legal stuff. And so we struggled. We kind of found one earlier, but it didn't really work, because when it comes to legal stuff, there are, let's say, 50 or 100 questions I might ask you, depending on what kind of business you have, what kind of offers you have, and different things. And then how you answer each of those questions will impact the guidance I would give you. And the answer you give over here that might not seem like it relates to over here will affect, maybe it won't affect whether you should do certain things, but it'll affect how important it is and what priority level it is to deal with that thing right now versus you can deal with it a year from now. And so it's kind of understanding that and bringing this holistic approach, to me, has always been my dream. It's just been hard because as a regulated provider in legal services, I can't provide legal advice to people. I just can't do it legally. If I'm working with people in a state I'm not licensed, it's illegal for me to do that. But my software can. And that's one of the great ways. And that was, again, part of what I was trying to do with the software is be able to package my knowledge in a way that we can provide the service to people who otherwise aren't getting this service at all.
So that's a great segue then into, okay, well, how are you doing all this? And so you've got some core features. What are they?
Yeah. So, well, let me back up before I talk about the core features. Okay. As I was thinking about this and doing market research, but also I've been working in this space since 2017 with coaches, course creators, consultants, service providers, et cetera, in the online world. So I have that knowledge, but we did some customer market research back in the early part of the year. And as I did that, I was kind of looking at what people were saying and then crystallizing in my own mind, what do people really need? And we kind of came up with 3 core pillars of things that people need. People need guidance. And part of the guidance here is, or not a guidance, let me talk about the planning first. They need a plan. And this comes down to the most common problem that we hear, or pain point we hear from people when we survey them, is, I don't know what I don't know about the legal stuff. That is like a phrase that I say it, but also I'm just saying so many people say that literally word for word in their answers. So we know that the first level is, hey, we've got to get past that, the unknown unknowns, help you understand what are the issues you need to deal with, create a plan. Then you need tools to execute, because having a plan is only good if you have tools to execute. And then the final piece is guidance, because the guidance is kind of an interesting thing. part of the guidance is often going to be me in a kind way, kind of telling you, hey, yeah, I know you think about that, but it's really not that important. Because if I'm honest with you, probably 50% of the questions I get asked are the wrong question. It's people worrying about the wrong thing. But I know that if I don't answer those things for people, they're not going to feel good. They're not going to have peace of mind, even if I know it doesn't matter, right? I've got to provide that peace of mind. So those were the three pillars, and our core features kind of address those. So the first thing is we are creating a legal manager that will start with an audit. It's kind of replacing that thing where I couldn't find quiz software to do this. You answer all these questions. And again, it's going to be in depth depending on how much you've got going on in your business. It could take 30 to 45 minutes for you to answer the questions, but they're literally questions about your business, not legal stuff in any way, shape, or form. We're just collecting the data we need to figure out what do you have in your business? What have you done? Have you not done legally? And then from there, the system is going to create a prioritized to-do list. And it's not everything. I mean, it'll be everything that we think of, but it'll be in lists of the risk level to your business so that you can start treating legal as an ongoing function, just like anything else you have to manage in your business, where you can decide, hey, I'm going to knock off the high priority stuff now. The low priority stuff, it's on my list to be done, but I know it's probably not going to be all that important if I have to make decisions. And so we're kind of giving it to you in that list. And the priority level, this is an example where I mentioned earlier, sometimes things are happening over here that impact things over here. Perfect example of this is as a business owner or as a business lawyer, I'm going to tell pretty much everybody that I think you should create an LLC. I just think it's a good practice to have an LLC, an entity, a limited liability company for your business. But if you're a solopreneur with no contractors, no employees, no one working in your business other than you, having an LLC is much less important. And the reason why is, and I hope I'm not stunning you when I say this, you're still going to be personally liable for your actions no matter what. Like I can't avoid being sued for malpractice as a lawyer by having an LLC. If I committed, when I had my law firm, if I committed malpractice, I would have been sued and my law firm would have been named, both of them. The difference was once I had an associate working for me, if she committed malpractice and they couldn't sue me personally, they could only sue the LLC. And so that's why, as an example, once you have a single employee, a single contractor, just anyone else doing something in your business, the importance of creating that LLC goes up. And so we're kind of creating this very customized logic that's doing all that. So that's the first function. The second function is kind of like you mentioned, my legal templates. It is the legal template or legal document generator. And I'm calling it 2.0, but really it's probably version 10.0 because it's leaps and bounds beyond what we had before. And it's purely you answer questions and then fill in the blanks, makes it very simple. We are working with folks to really kind of dial it in and make sure that we've given all the options, but that'll make it simple for you to kind of get your agreements, legal policies, et cetera, in place. Then the final, and I won't dwell on that because I think most people understand what that is, but it's a very simple way to get all those things in place. The third core feature is chat legal. And this is the idea of how do I answer questions for people and provide information that is kind of beyond maybe the guidance we give them in the to-dos. Like in the legal to-dos, once you go through that, you'll get a lot of knowledge there. But people ask all kinds of questions, and we're providing a system that is doing that. We collected 4,400 questions, but I'm drafting answers to all of those, and we're building a system, and this is where we're pulling in AI, not to write answers, but to do what AI is very good at, to match questions that people ask with the answer, but based upon kind of me providing this database of saying, hey, these 7 questions that people answered, they're all answered by this one answer. And so the AI system will do that, and then also engage in conversation to make it conversational so that the system can collect more information or get clarification from you if it needs it. Or, for example, if someone were to come and ask like 7 questions all in one, the AI system hopefully will be able to then kind of pull it apart and say, okay, well, let's talk about one question at a time. It'll do those things to really get the right answers for people. But that's kind of the third core feature is that piece, which is it's using AI to basically pull knowledge that I've pulled out of my brain and to make sure that you're getting the right answer to your question. So those are the core features. Now we got a lot of stuff on the roadmap for later development, but those are the 3 core features that we're developing as kind of the first piece, the first big development project.
So yeah, I personally can't wait. This is exciting. So let me ask you one last question that is probably something that I hate to admit, but I imagine colleagues, especially since again I was a salaried employee for 20 years, jumped into the online space after COVID, so it was all new. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but part of it was like, look, it's just me. I'm not doing a lot, and I'm ethical. I know I'm doing okay. I don't need legal.
Yeah.
And then I started to get a little bit more scared, and I says, well, I see everybody's got like a terms and conditions and a privacy policy somebody asked me about, and I was like, oh, I better get that. Um, but for those that are out there and they're like, so I don't know if I really need this legal stuff. I'm doing fine. What would you offer?
So what I'll tell you is the legal stuff. I mean, I'm going to be a bit different than most people, right? Because most people in my shoes will say, "Oh, it's it's the worst thing in the world." And I'm going to tell a story, and then get around to this. Back in 2019, I joined a mastermind, and there's this book that's called Breakthrough Advertising. It was written back in the 60s. It is a great book about how to write copy and write it in a good way. And it basically talks about how selling a prophylactic product like legal stuff or insurance is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to write a headline for that unless you're willing to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but scare the heck out of people, not about themselves, but about what will happen to their families and people they care about based on this. And so he posted that, and then there were like all these people in the chat saying, "Oh yeah, I could see you talking about how if people don't deal with the legal stuff, their families are going to be poor, they're going to get divorces." I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that because it's not accurate, right? I mean, the stuff we're dealing with here as online business owners, there are some things that could cost you a lot of money. Let me be clear, but it's not that kind of stuff. It's not like you're going to jail for most of these things. In fact, I don't even think there are any, I mean, other than fraud, which hopefully we know don't lie. I mean, that's more an ethical thing than a legal thing. But as long as you're not lying to people to get them to give you money, you're probably not going to jail. So you don't have to worry about that. It's really about how much money is at stake, et cetera. And so I'm going to tell you, it's not earth shattering. There are things that you need to do. You mentioned privacy policy. There are laws that require you to have a privacy policy, period, full stop. You need to have it. The other stuff, most of the other stuff at least, is best practice. Now, there are exceptions. If you have a membership or any kind of subscription model, there's a law that requires you to make it very clear how people can unsubscribe or can cancel their membership, right? So you have to have something like that. But it's more in the nuances of understanding things like there are laws in various states about refund policies. And what they come down to is, hey, if you don't have a written refund policy, you have to honor reasonable refund requests. I don't know about you, but I don't know what a reasonable refund request is under that law. And so that's where we lawyers would tell you, you need to write that out just to avoid it. It's more about, let's avoid a potential issue. And the other piece is that legal stuff, yes, some of it, not a huge deal. You can deal with it later. But a lot of stuff, if you mess up and don't deal with it right up front, like it's the kind of thing that it could become a problem. And when it becomes a problem, it's a big problem. Let me give you a couple of examples of that. Number one, people ask me all the times, okay, so I got people into my course and I didn't get them to agree to terms, or I got people to sign up to one terms and conditions, but I want to change it. How do I get people in my course to change it? I'm like, you can't. I mean, when they signed that contract, your terms, when they bought, that was the contract. You can't force them to agree to anything else later on. Now, memberships are different because it's ongoing and they're making payments, et cetera. But there's little things like that. You just need to understand if you don't do it up front, you can't really get it done. With a course, not a huge deal. But here's another place where it does come up is branding and trademark issues. I've heard so many people who they start building a business with a brand name of some sort or another, or maybe they start a podcast or they do something where they're building up this equity in a brand and they didn't do a trademark search. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what a trademark search is, basically it's kind of whoever first uses a name commercially to describe their product, service, brand, et cetera, gets dibs on it. They're the only ones who can use that if they claim those rights. And so people don't do these searches to figure that out. And they don't hear from the trademark owner up front because when you're first starting out, nobody's heard of you, right? But if you get successful, if you start to make waves, if people start hearing about you, all of a sudden then the trademark owner will come forward and say, no, you can't use that name. It's mine. And that's when all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, I've spent 6 months, a year, 2 years, however long it is, building up the equity in that brand name. And now I have to change it. And I mean, it's first of all, you've lost all that effort, but it's also now there's a cost involved. I got to re-record all my videos if they have that branding potentially, or at least edit them somehow to do that. It just creates a massive problem for you. And so it's really about thinking about those things from the beginning and dealing with those things from the beginning. Now, I'll tell you, the good news is, as I was writing the logic for a legal manager, the vast majority of tasks are not high priority or high risk. And we're very clear about that. These are not things that are going to be a huge thing, but they are things that could be a problem. And so you have to make the decision what is your risk tolerance for this? And would you rather just deal with it and know it's not going to be a problem, or are you willing to take the risk? And those are decisions that you have to make as a business owner. Those aren't legal questions. Those are business owner decisions about where your comfort level is with all these things.
Thanks for that answer. And I appreciate you with the transparency of saying, look, I'm not going to scare you into this, which is a common marketing one, but rather this has been my experience for those that are watching with Bobby here, is that he invests in the people who join this family. It's like he generally wants the best for us. And again, to my colleagues, where we want the legal stuff because we want to take care of our clients. We want to be sure that we're doing it the right way for them, not because we're scared, but rather because that's what we do. We want to help them. We want to ease their minds. We want to be sure that we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed, because we want to be competent. We want to be ethical, was a word that you had used. Very, very important, I hope, for everybody, particularly in our circles. And this legal is a bit of an ethical thing as it goes in, and also takes care of them, which is, again, what happens when we join your family. I spark something in you.
Yeah. I mean, what I want to say is, and this is something like I sometimes hear people talk about, like, they're concerned that their clients aren't going to be happy about having to sign an agreement, like a client agreement, for example, or a coaching agreement. And I like to tell people the purpose of those agreements is not for you to pull one over or get the best of someone else. Part of the point of getting agreements in writing is actually to make sure that you're on the same page.
Yeah, clarity.
Because the people you work with in a client capacity, they're your bread and butter. I mean, they are the lifeblood of your business. And the last thing you want is to have a dispute. And this is the pitch I always made for legal agreements: is you want to make sure that you guys are on the same page, and that there's a written document showing you're on the same page, and that surfaces all these issues. Like, some people have said, oh, well, someone objected to this clause in this agreement. I said, well, fine. Now they have different expectations, and you can decide what your comfort level is, because otherwise we're going in and we might have different expectations. And even if we had the same expectations at the beginning, one of the things I always like to tell people is, humans believe they remember way better than they actually do. Yeah. And it's not only that, it's almost always, most of us end up more of the hero over time. And in the context of like a contract, it's like, if two people, like if you and I negotiated a contract, just worked out all the details and talked about it today, 6 months from now, I almost guarantee you that we would not have the same memory, and you would remember the contract favoring you more, and I would remember the contract favoring me more. And so a lot of disputes that happen are really, I believe, good faith. It's not one person trying to be rude or trying to pull one over. It just are these good faith disputes, and getting those agreements in writing prevents that. It just prevents it. And the problem, if you have those disputes, is one party or another is going to feel like they're kind of getting the short end of the stick if there's no written agreement, because they're going to feel like they're giving up something that they shouldn't have. Whereas if there's a written agreement and you look at it like, oh, I guess I did agree to that. Okay. I mean, you can't be mad at the other party. And so, sometimes it'll help you, sometimes it'll hurt you, but in the long run, it'll protect your relationships, which I think is the most important thing for all of us in business, is to protect those relationships. And so, that's the other reason to do this stuff and do it at the beginning. It's just to make sure that you've got all of the things taken care of and you're on a solid footing with people.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Bobby, thank you so much. Excited about the launch. Friends, click the link that I have attached here to get into the Legal is Not a Dirty Word. You've learned a lot here, but you're going to actually get to see what Plainly Legal does. I mean, get an experience with it. Tremendous event. Got a link for you to click. Any last words about that, Bobby?
Yeah, look, I mean, we made this event kind of fun. I mean, by the name, legal's not a dirty word, because we wanted it to not be scary, and we're trying to make it not scary. So, and quite honestly, my team gets to take some shots at me as the lawyer and kind of, makes a little fun at my behalf, which I think is a good idea. But we're making it very simple. You'll get the information you need. You'll kind of get in, get out. You don't feel like you're gonna have to listen to long lectures, because nobody wants that. I mean, even lawyers, the only way that they get us to attend these is require continuing legal education. So we didn't want to do that to you. It's short, sweet, and to the point, to make your life easy. So I hope to see you in there. And no matter what you do, don't let this stuff freak you out.
Yeah, in fact, we're having a great conversation, but I believe that the event is shorter than what this interview was. So if you made it to this point of this interview, you can actually test out and see and actually get an experience of this software. So I hope you'll see us there. Best wishes to everybody. Thanks again, Bobby.
Thanks.